Hey everyone, this week we're going to go ahead and take a look at how to put together an actual magic show. Alright, so this week I wanted to take an opportunity to focus on something that a lot of you guys have been asking, and that is, how do I actually put together an act? You know, like a coherent performance from start to finish that doesn't just look like I'm endlessly performing tricks for people. So before we do this, I wanted to clear up 3 definitions for you guys. These are going to be things that I'm going to be talking about throughout that are very important to understand. Definition number 1 is effect. Anytime you hear me talk about an effect, I'm going to be talking about a single piece of magic. For example, an effect might be a card actually vanishes from the deck and ends up inside the pocket. So any kind of single effect or single plot will be an effect. The second thing is routine. Now, a routine is actually a collection of effects. For example, effect number 1 might be the card vanishes from the deck and ends up inside my pocket. Effect number 2 might be the entire deck, all except for the spectator's chosen card, vanishes and ends up inside my pocket. And then the third effect might be the spectator's selected card vanishes and appears in some impossible location, like inside of the card case, for example. Taking all 3 of those things and putting them together in a coherent performance is a routine. And last but not least, we're going to be talking about the act. Now, the act is the entire show itself. Just like how a routine is a bunch of effects put together, an act is simply a series of routines that are all put together. So now that we have some clarification on the definitions, let's talk about the thought process of how to actually build the show. So number 1, think about how many types of different effects that you already know, that you're already very comfortable with, or that you think would be fun to perform for people. Once you have a really good idea of those effects that you're going to perform, now it's time to start coupling effects together. Which ones go well with one another? This is how you're going to start building a routine. So for example, with the card to pocket example that I gave earlier, I had a couple of different ideas with ways that I can make a card vanish and appear inside my pocket, or make the deck vanish, or make the card jump to an impossible location. You put all of those things together in a coherent step-by-step performance, and that makes a routine. Then, once you've done that, the next step, of course, is script writing, theming the effect, and coming up with the presentation and the performance for the effect. I suggest go ahead and checking out the link in the description below. I'm going to link you guys to a couple of other videos that touch on this subject for the sake of keeping this video short so I don't ramble on too much about performance and theming and script writing. Alright, so now you already have a couple of effects put together and you've created a routine. The next step is to keep repeating the process until you have a couple of different routines put together. Now, the routines themselves don't necessarily have to tie into the next one. So for example, if I have a Chinese linking ring routine, a card effect, and a sponge ball routine, those 3 routines do not necessarily go together. The magic of building an act is finding ways to transition from one to the next to the next. And there's a few different ways that you can do that. One of the ways that I like to transition is by using something that I like to call the rule of 3s. So anytime you think of a beginning, a middle, and an end, you want to really think of the rule of 3. So 1, 2, 3. The opener is usually a really strong piece of magic, something that's very visual, catches the person's eye. Number 2, you have the middle segment. This is going to be the roller coaster ride where they go up, they go down, they laugh, they cry. You're going to take them on a roller coaster ride, so to speak, of the performance. And then the third piece, of course, is the climax. Now, the climax is the point in which it builds up to your finale. The goal is to have everything lead up to that climax. So even though each individual routine of the act doesn't necessarily go with one another, you can thematically tie everything together through the tone. So what is the tone exactly? The tone is how you want your audience to feel. So for example, me personally, I'm kind of lighthearted, funny, kind of quirky. I make some stupid dad jokes, and overall my performance is pretty silly. So the tone for my show is one that is very lighthearted in feel. It wouldn't feel right to the audience if I opened with a very funny, over-the-top opener, and then my middle segment was very serious mentalism, and then my finale was like geek magic where I'm, you know, swallowing razor blades or something. That whole idea of the tone is that you want it to be the same throughout so that you don't confuse the audience. Last but not least, another little idea that you can use to kind of tie everything together is by using some kind of repeating gag or recurring event. So, for example, in my act, the invisible purse becomes a recurring act throughout my entire show. So I open up with the invisible purse, I'm pulling sponge balls out of it, I'm making them vanish, making them multiply, etc. And then I set the purse down, move on to the next effect. Then in the next effect, I kind of go back to the purse, open it up, take out a hanky, wipe the sweat away, put it back, set the purse back down. You don't have to make a big deal out of it, but by having the purse come into play again, it kind of ties back to the opener of my act. And then last but not least, I do a card effect for my closer, and of course I need a card signed, so where am I going to get the Sharpie from? I get the Sharpie from the purse. So it's that repeating gag aspect of it that kind of ties everything together. Make sure not to overuse repeating gags because they can tend to get a little old. But again, that rule of 3, I like to have the repeating gag happen around 3 times or so. Anyway, I hope these ideas kind of helped you guys to put together your act. If you liked this video, please be sure to share it with your friends. Make sure to leave a comment if I didn't answer any of your questions. I'll be more than happy to get to them. And if you want to see more magic content just like this and you're not already subscribed, please do so, because every single week we're going to be putting out advice for magicians and content just like this. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next week with another video. Take care.